First leadership team meeting, when I started there, a teacher looked at me and said, "Are you going to be here next year?" Like, that was our first conversation. And so it wasn't about kids. It wasn't about education. It was just a little bit of cynicism.
That is Dr. Danny Steele, former principal, 2016 Alabama Secondary Principal of the Year, and a leader who spent 31 years serving schools. He walked into a school where trust had eroded and leadership turnover had created skepticism.
There's this adage that kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them as students. That same truth applies to leadership. They don't care how much knowledge you have until they know you care about them as people.
He breaks down why culture is built in small moments, why caring for teachers changes everything, and how leadership shifts when you see your true mission as serving the adults who serve the children.
When you become an administrator, a school leader, your mission changes, and your new job is to make a difference for the adults in the building.
Today, he outlines a mindset shift that transformed his leadership journey from his first principalship. By the end of this conversation, you will learn how to rebuild trust, reignite purpose, and create a culture where both educators and students thrive. I'm Dr. Matthew Flippen, and this is Transformational Educators. I know that many times, in a mid-career, that it's hard for educators, teachers, staff, leaders to maintain their passion and a clear view of their why. That focus on the children and the need to help all of them, perform and thrive, really, and flourish. So I'd love for you to take us back to one of your campus leadership roles and just tell us a little bit about what it was like when you arrived there. Give us some history when you stepped into that role, what was going on there.
Well, there was one school in particular that I came in, and, that it was a good faculty, but I was going to be like their fourth principal in about, 5 or 6 years. And so they were a little bit jaded, right? And skeptical. And so I definitely wanted to, win them over. And you don't demand respect, you inspire it, by how you go about doing your work. And so, as a school leader, as an administrator for 22 years, my goal is to be relentless about supporting my staff and to never stop connecting with the kids, and then trying to build the type of culture where teachers are inspired and empowered, and where kids like coming to school. So that's kind of what I do and how I approach the work. And I feel like in my 5 years at this school, we really made a difference.
I know we talked about you are an optimist and believe that everyone is there for the right reasons. Was there something that clued you in on that there were maybe members of the team where their passion or their why had waned some?
I remember at my first leadership team meeting, when I started there, a teacher looked at me and said, "Are you going to be here next year?" Like, that was our first conversation. And so, it wasn't about kids. It wasn't about education. It was just a little bit of cynicism. One of our faculty meetings, I don't remember if it was maybe the second year, the first faculty meeting, though, of that school year, I handed out a copy of the Hippocratic Oath. And, that's the oath physicians take that it talks about their commitments to their patients. And I asked them to underline, to read it, take a minute to read it and underline or highlight any phrases that resonate with them, as educators. And then we talked about it as a faculty. And, there's a phrase about, "I do not treat a fever chart or a cancerous growth, but a sick human being." And as educators, we think, or I'm reminded of this idea, I don't teach second grade language arts. I teach kids. So there are a number of these types of sentiments that just really resonate. And then I challenged them to think about what would be in their oath as a teacher. And what are their commitments? They're the things that they really are committed to their kids, to the parents, to their colleagues. Like, what are those core values? Some people might frame that as, what is your why, right? So I had them jot it down and we shared out a little bit. And then my challenge to them was, I would like for all of you to write your own oath. And, I asked them to do it in the next week or two. And I said, it doesn't have to be in complete sentences. I don't care how long it is. I don't care the format. All I want is that it's personal to you. And I wrote my own oath as a principal. And in years that followed, I had custodians write their oath, and I asked them to put it outside their door or on a bulletin board or something. And then the following year, we put it on their teacher class websites, and it was just so powerful. These things teachers wrote, things like, I will be my student's biggest cheerleader. I promise to learn alongside my students. One teacher wrote, I vow to retire when I no longer have the passion to be an extraordinary teacher. Like, wow. And so when times are challenging, right, and you feel your passion start to drift a little bit, that brings you back to center. Those remembering what it is that you truly care about, that's something to hold on to when adversity comes, because the adversity is going to come. And the work is hard. There's a lot of emotional labor that goes with it. But those oaths were very, very powerful. And, you couldn't read them and not be impacted.
Yeah. And I can imagine that, any school, right, has a variety of children, and some have a lot of strengths and some have struggles. And so how did that commitment to those oaths, how did you see that impact children? Were you able to see a difference there?
Well, I can tell you a story, like probably most of your listeners are familiar with the starfish story. My 3 math teachers, they came into my office one day and they said, we would like your permission to change up our lunch rosters. It was like with a study hall and a lunch. And we've looked at our students' achievement data, and we would like to sort of juggle the rosters to where we can strategically group our kids to provide better intervention and tutoring. And is it okay if we do that? Like they said, we've already figured it out. We're just like your permission. And like they're asking for more work, right? When a lot of teachers were looking at that time as a break, they're putting more work on themselves. They cut out a starfish out of some like cardboard, and they decorated the outside with glitter, and they put a little piece of yarn through it to where I could hang it up. They gave me that starfish, and they said, we know that you'll appreciate this because what we're doing is trying to make a difference for these students with their math achievement. And like, as a principal, I can't tell you how proud that made me of my staff members, and the fact that they knew that I would love the starfish, and I kept it for years.
What did that mean to you personally? Obviously, that's moved you emotionally when you think about that. Was it their willingness to go the extra mile for every child? I mean, what I love about the starfish story is I'm making a difference for this one starfish.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's why we get into education, is to make a difference for individual students. And so they just didn't look at the roster as a whole, but they looked at the individual kids, and they're wanting to make a difference for the individual kids. And I'm like, that's the type of culture that, yeah, we're trying to build. And so it inspires me just thinking about it.
Hey, educators. I hope you're enjoying this conversation. At Graceland University, we believe real change in education starts with compassionate leadership and practical support. That's why we share stories like this. If something in today's episode spoke to you, maybe about your purpose, your next step, or how you can make a bigger impact, I invite you to explore how Graceland walks alongside educators through degree programs and strategic partnerships. Scan the QR code on screen or follow the link in the show notes to learn more. Now let's get back to the episode. Yeah, me too. That fires me up. Danny, thank you for sharing that. Now, there's a lot of work that obviously went in between the first staff meeting when there was cynicism about, is this guy going to be around next year, and this complete different example of a staff coming to you and intimately knowing you enough to present you the starfish and doing the work. in between those two stories, what were some of the things that you did that also helped reignite passion or keep that going?
Yeah, well, you build school culture not with one big strategic initiative. Culture is made in the little moments. And so it's just a relentless commitment to connecting kids and supporting staff. I started a tradition. I didn't come up with this idea. I stole it from somebody, of birthday selfies with the principal. But every day on the kid's birthday, I would pull him in the hallway and talk to him, and, would take a selfie, and I'd send it to their parent, birthday selfie with the principal. And that's a little thing, right? But that's a little moment of connecting with kids. And I realized that sometimes walking back to my office after taking that little selfie with the student, I realized I could have gone the entire year and not had a conversation with that kid, because, some kids go below the radar. And so continually telling stories about this, like at faculty meeting, we would talk about test scores and student achievement, but there was not a faculty meeting really that went by that we didn't talk about those personal connections. One of my favorite things we did at that school is we created a wall of dreams. And again, I did not come up with this idea. I saw the idea somewhere else. But our maintenance tech went to the hardware store and bought 2 like white shower boards and sort of spliced them together on a main hallway and put a little homemade frame around it. And so it was 4 feet by 16 feet. And we asked all of our students to write their dreams, in different color Sharpies. And so it's 500 different little dreams. And these are, you had some kids write, I want to be a professional basketball player, or I want to be a rapper. Turns out there's tons of 11-year-olds that want to be professional YouTubers. But we would also have kids write, my dream is to be a 6th grade peer helper. Someone wrote, my dream is for my dad to get out of jail. One person wrote, I want the world to hear my voice. You can't read these and not be impacted emotionally. And so I would encourage our teachers to, like, on your way to the copy machine, stop and read a couple of the dreams. Like, we want to raise test scores, but no educator got into education to raise test scores. It's to inspire and empower our kids to reach their dreams. And so we had another little homemade board that we put up next to the main office, 4 feet by 4 feet, where I asked our staff, all of our staff members, to write their hopes for our kids. And it was just another way of keeping us all grounded in what really matters and helping us stay centered. And so looking for every possible little moment to keep the adults in the building connected to what really matters, that's what we just tried to do relentlessly.
Danny, and these are practical strategies. I mean, I love how humble you are about you borrowed it from someone. We call it borrowing, right? It's not stealing. But I'm a big believer that staff, especially, I mean, the people that we lead, they want to feel known, they want to feel loved, and they want to be inspired by purpose. And in what you were doing in some of these activities was incredibly inspirational. And talk about connecting to the why. I mean, I think about, not only helping children succeed, but just being empathetic to the child whose parent is in prison, and understanding how important it is to be a healthy adult relationship for our children, who so many are coming from hard backgrounds. Yeah, I really respect that and the work that you did there. Was there anything that tried to derail this process that you're going? Was there an event that happened that you had to course correct from because it tried to throw off this great work that you were doing?
I think I don't know that I can think of one specific thing, but I can say that this is a reality everywhere. Is there's always going to be adults that sometimes bring a little bit of negativity and that start complaining about stuff. I told you in an earlier conversation that I've recently reread Winnie the Pooh, and I'm struck by the difference between Tigger and Eeyore, right? And 2 different personalities. And, I suspect that we all have a little bit of Tigger upbeat, energetic, optimistic. And we all have a little bit of Eeyore where we're tired and we want to complain. We kind of have a negative outlook. And so, there's always going to be some people that show up to work and they're just feeling a little bit Eeyore. And it's easy to let that then steal our energy and joy and get frustrated. But one of the lessons from the book, Winnie the Pooh, the first time we see Eeyore complaining, it's because he lost his tail. Like, that's not like losing your car keys. It's a big deal. Another time when Eeyore is complaining, the little kangaroo, Roo, had fallen into the river and he was drowning. He couldn't swim. And Eeyore backed up to the river, set his tail in the water to give him something to hang on to. And he was complaining because his tail was cold then, because it was all wet. Well, like, he's the hero of the story. So one of the lessons for me, I think for all of us, is that when we run into those Eeyores, like, be gracious. We don't know what's going on that has led them to have that negative outlook, that's led them to be discouraged or negative. So be gracious, with our colleagues, and know there's always more than meets the eye, but also don't let Eeyore steal your good energy.
Yeah, that's such a great example. I love that. I've gotten in the habit recently when people ask me how I'm doing, I say, well, if I look right, there's some incredible things going on. And if I look left, there's some really hard things that I'm dealing with at the same time. And I think all of us can say that probably at any moment, right? And nothing's perfect most of the time, but oftentimes, even when things are hard, there still are things we can celebrate, in our lives. And I think being sensitive to what is dominating our thoughts and our heart in any given moment, and just like you said, being empathetic is so critical. Is so critical for leaders. Leaders ourselves have that same going on, right? I mean, I know, you can be a campus principal and want to be best for your staff and your children and your families, but your own child might be suffering in some way that is really causing you a lot of heartache. And so being honest, I think about, hey, we got to have Eeyore days and we're going to have Tigger days. I think you've mentioned you've got some socks that match this theme as well. Is that right?
Yeah, my wife for Christmas bought me a lot of Winnie the Pooh socks, and one of the pairs, it means multiple pairs of Winnie the Pooh socks. So I've gone all in with Winnie the Pooh. But one of them is one sock is a big picture of Eeyore and one sock is a big picture of Tigger, and it's a good visual reminder. We can't choose our circumstances. We can always choose what we focus on. It's good to look for things that build you up and affirm your values.
Yeah, totally. Now, you mentioned, going back to that, I keep thinking about that first staff meeting where there was this cynicism. So you show up the next year for the first staff meeting, and I guess they're like, well, he made it 1 year. How long did it take for that to go away, where you were like, okay, 90+% of the staff knows I'm here for them and I'm here to stay?
Just like you don't build culture with some big grand initiative, you build it with small moments. You win over your staff in small moments. Like, I had a teacher come up to me, and I was her assistant principal like 15 years earlier. And she came up and she told me at a basketball game about a parent conference that was so hard, but I was so supportive. I had her back with that tough parent. I didn't even remember it, but it made an impact on her. The teacher that was really, really cynical, that first meeting, a couple years later, her house burned down. She and her husband were fine. I drove to visit them. It was like 45 minutes away, and on a Saturday morning, and that made an impact on her. And so there's this adage that educators are familiar with, that kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them as students. That same adage, that same truth applies to leadership. The teachers don't care about your PhD in curriculum and instruction. They don't care how much knowledge you have until they know you care about them as people. And so, over the years, when I've been able to build strong connections with staff members, it's because of a commitment to caring about them as people.
That's an incredible theme, and so true, so true. I mean, we all want to be back to what our beliefs about loved, known, right, and inspired. And I think you've done an incredible job. I know that's just one of your leadership stories. Danny, you've got many other campuses that you stepped into leadership roles. Now, it is amazing though when you think about these interactions you have that made like that teacher from 15 years earlier, right? I mean, how one that must have been so unusual for her to experience that kind of support from a leader that it made that lasting memory. So yeah, well done on that for sure. Yeah, I really appreciate Danny just reminding us of what it means like to really not just talk about being committed to our staff and our purpose and our why, but also demonstrating it through real tangible practices that are repeatable. Is there any other guidance you would offer to future campus leaders along these lines about building strong relationships with staff?
The biggest lesson I learned as an administrator, I learned it after my third year as an assistant principal. I was itching to be principal, and the principal at our school had announced he was retiring. And so I wanted to step into the role. I was the AP that had been there for 2 years, and I was feeling like it was my job now. And I was riding in the car during this application process, during that window of time. I was riding with the principal back from a meeting, and he said, "Danny, I think some of the teachers see you more as an advocate for kids than for teachers." And that actually made me really angry when I heard that, because I thought, yeah, we're here for the kids. The adults can take care of themselves. Well, I didn't get that job. But that summer I resolved, this was like the summer of 2004, I think. That summer I resolved that I will forever be a champion for the teachers. And now we still love the kids. We're always going to do right by kids. But, most administrators, they were former teachers, and you become a teacher because you love kids and you want to make a difference for kids. It's not because you're in it for the adults. But what I tell young administrators is that when you become an administrator, a school leader, your mission changes, and your new job is to make a difference for the adults in the building. You will be defined by your ability to support your staff. Again, remember, as a principal, I took 1,000 birthday selfies with kids, right? So we never stop loving the kids. We never stop doing right by them. But it's really important for administrators to make that paradigm shift that, okay, we are winning over the adults. We're supporting them, and they're the ones who will be taking care of the kids under their care. So, that's the most important lesson I had to learn. I learned it the hard way. It cost me my first principalship, but it is really informed how I've approached leadership the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Danny. But I also think what a gift it was that you didn't get that position, because you needed this shift so that you would then have this impact over the next 20 years in school leadership.
I can see how it's a good thing now, but there were a few weeks where I was really been out of shape over not getting the job.
Well, for sure. Anytime we face a setback, or if you say a failure, if you define it that way, I mean, it still hurts, right? But I will say I've learned my most important lessons through failures and hard circumstances, definitely. Well, Danny, what's the best way that people can follow you and just learn more about your work?
I'm excited that I've recently, in the last few months, launched a newsletter. It's about bringing positive energy and a little bit of inspiration weekly, and it's free. Anybody that subscribes will get a free copy of my book of quotes for teachers, a PDF of that. You could subscribe on our website, which is steelethoughts.com. That's my social media handle as well, Steel Thoughts. And my email is danny@steelethoughts.com. I love being connected with passionate educators, and iron sharpens iron, and and we need each other. So yeah, I would love to connect.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for being part of this. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with a colleague or an educator who would benefit from hearing about Danny's story and it's just real life example of what transformational leadership looks like. And please follow Transformational Educators so you never miss an episode. And until next time, keep leading with purpose and transforming schools into places where everyone thrives. If today's conversation gave you fresh insight or inspired you to lead with purpose, please follow the show and tell a friend. It helps us reach more educators who want to make a difference. For more stories, resources, and tools to support your leadership journey, visit graceland.edu. Until next time, keep leading with courage and care.